All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to learn 5 new skills to up-level your ability to deal with uncertainty. I am going to introduce Amelia and I. So there's the two of us. I'm the person on my screen. I'm on the left with the white sweater, and then Amelia, my co-founder, is in the purple there. We started P.A.U.S E for Change last year after doing this work of leading organizations through change efforts across the country for about 5 years. And it's really interesting to look at some of our slides from before COVID, because a lot of the messages we've been teaching over the years are all about uncertainty, all about how to address the unknown and how to make more efficient, effective decisions as you move your organization forward. And so it's we've been growing together as a team and really helping organizations now even more up-level those skills. So I'm glad that you're here today. So yesterday was Amelia's birthday, so I just have to take a moment because I adore her and she is just the best friend and co-founder you could ever imagine. So happy birthday, Amelia.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you.
So Zoom is a lot of fun and many of us are super tired of it because that's where life is now. So we're just gonna embrace the awkward. If your dog barks, totally cool. If you gotta pause your video and go take care of something, we totally get it. If a kid, jumps around your shoulder and says hello, that is fine. We are all humans doing the best we can with all the work that we're doing. So we just want to call that out, that it's okay to be human and it's okay to have some awkward pauses. When we do ask you to engage, we know that there's a slight delay on Zoom for you to answer certain questions and type your answers. So we'll be uncomfortable in that brief pause as we all respond, but we just want to call that out before we jump in. We want to thank you for giving us some of your time. We know that you're being inundated with offers to join other webinars, you have meetings for work, you're balancing family and your own self-care. So we really want to honor and appreciate the value of your time and that you're sharing it with us and with everyone here. So thank you. And in the chat, we're going to have our first little response. I attended a different webinar last week and I really liked this activity. They asked us to say how we were feeling today, kind of a check-in. And Amelia and I check in. We've worked as a remote team almost the entire time we've been in business together. We always check in the morning. And so I would love for you to check in and put in the chat, are you feeling red? Like, oh, today's a hard day. It's Monday morning. Are you feeling yellow? Like, oh, okay, let's see what the day holds. Are you feeling green? Like, let's do this. Like, ooh, it's gonna be a great day. So say what color you're feeling. Okay, got some green. Ooh. Yellow and green. Mm-hmm. Frank's feeling green. I like it. Some yellow. Oh, hi, Debbie. Yeah, yellow, green. Oh, nice. They had someone that was on the call that was like naming these fancy colors I had never heard of. They were combos of all those colors. Oh, pink. Oh, I like that, Bettina. Very nice. I think that check-ins, especially right now, are so important with your loved ones and with your colleagues and with friends. That's really the first place to start. During COVID, pre-COVID, post-COVID, like always start with checking. And that's really what we do with the folks we work with. See how people are feeling first, because you know the foundation that they're starting from. So thank you for your responses. So the other thing we want to do before we jump in is that we really want to hold space for the feelings that we do feel. I know, like many of you, thinking about the lost lives, thinking about our frontline workers, thinking about our essential workers, thinking about the faceless and nameless individuals that we'll never know that just get wrapped up in statistics. That's important for all of us to think about that as we're moving forward. And how we think of the light inside all of us is we have this little light shining that keeps that flame burning for our passion for the work that we do. But now more than ever, that little flame has become this. It's become the flamethrower. For us, we want this moment to have meaning. If people are losing their lives, they're losing all of their certainty, their financial strength, all of us losing our social connections. And I would just love to hug somebody that doesn't live in my house at this moment. If we're feeling such loss, I want it to mean something. I want this time to be transformative so that we can activate these new skills and abilities to be that flamethrower in the sector and really initiate change efforts in a whole new way. So we hope that you also can convert some of that little shining light of some of the downtime into this, this bold, bright light of movement forward and new change. So just to ground our work, these are the core beliefs that motivate and drive us forward. We have to pause to accelerate. We called the company Pause for Change because that was the #1 advice we kept giving people. You know, slow down, hold up. We have to ask different questions. We have to work in a new way. And we need those new skills in the sector and how we address issues. And we need new voices at the table. We've been hearing from the same people for many, many years. So we really want to see change and who is empowered to move initiatives forward. So what we do is we help organizations really simply address challenges in less time, using fewer resources to achieve greater impact. It's really about being more efficient and effective to create change. So on our website, we want to call out that we have uncertainty resources that we've added. We normally help people with uncertainty, but now it's kind of on overdrive. So if you haven't already checked it out, if you go to the website, pauseforchange.com, you can't miss it. There's a banner at the top of the page and off to the side with uncertainty resources. And these are what we're trying to offer to really help people navigate this change. So we have blog posts that we are putting out as much as we can with insights. We are working on a lot of interesting projects that we're trying to share learning with the community of change makers like all of you. We're offering free strategy sessions. If you want to have an hour of our time, we are giving that away absolutely for free right now. And in no way is it a sales opportunity for us or us trying to motivate you to push forward with services, but we really want to understand what is the most compelling need that you have and how can we just lend an ear, some support, some advice, some direction. So please take us up on that. You can do that through the website. We have webinars like this. We'll continue to have webinars and we'll keep you posted about all the different topics. And then we have moved what was before our 2-day in-person followed by 12-week of remote coaching for our in-depth training around innovation and uncertainty skills. All of that's now virtual, like everyone's had to make that shift. You can do all of our coursework for 50% off. We have half the price to do all of it online at your desk with your team or as an individual. So check those out as well. And we can talk about and answer your questions if you're intrigued by that. So it's just an understatement to say we're in uncertainty, right? That's the biggest thing that we're hearing. And these are slides that we had before COVID. We used to always frame our work around when you don't know the way to go, this is when you use these new superpowers. And before we said that these were the areas that were really, we treated them as black and white. They were now more gray, right? So just think about some of these. This is before COVID. You know, what it is to be part of a faith community. That has really shifted in the United States. Demographic shifts have really changed. Even reality itself has been up for grabs recently with virtual and augmented reality. The definition of family has shifted, how we view climate, our interaction with government, what it means to be social. All of this was already up in the air. So what was tethering us to the ground and connecting us to one another was already slightly up for grabs. And then you add a global pandemic on top of it. You can only imagine how not only you feel, but how the constituents you serve, your colleagues at work, how everyone's been sort of mired in this shift opportunity and in this kind of murky space. So in the chat, go back to that chat box. We want to hear, thinking about all the uncertainty, what's a priority area of uncertainty that you are most focused on right now? What's top of mind for you, for your organization, how you're engaging with your community? Go ahead and list that in the chat box. What does work look like in the future? Oh, I love that. My physical office. How to keep people involved, absolutely. Economic devastation, yep. Financial uncertainty. Yes, your target clients, absolutely, yeah. How you function as an organization. Oh, yes, school and kids. I have a 10, 13-year-old and it's been lots of fun. Trying to figure that out. Food at the food bank. How do you organize workers? You know, have access to a workplace. Oh, labor union, yeah. And then companies shifting what they want to invest in. Those are really important. There is so much going on that it's really essential to prioritize the biggest area of uncertainty. You might, just for your own brain, release some of that space and list all of the areas that you're concerned about, but really focusing in on what's the top that we need to work on right now. Oh, Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer. Family leadership transitions. What products in the company? Yeah, when all this pandemic hit, we were working with a health department, a superintendent of schools, starting to talk to a university department, and it's so fascinating how all of that just screeched to a halt and how we've all had to pivot. So a lot of people are looking like, what's the sector going to change and be like in the future? So thank you for contributing, very helpful. So while everything is uncertain, I just heard this quote last week, when nothing is certain, everything is possible. We feel like many of us have been sounding the alarm that, things are highly uncertain. There's a lot of change, but we haven't really had the response that we've been looking for. But we feel like this is also going to give us an opportunity and space to really explore what could be possible. So we hope that you can join us in some of that mind shift about how this could lead to change in your own life and your organization. And this is normally how we think about getting started, moving forward. We see a problem, we make a plan, we take action, and we get results. That's like what the aim is for. And that people talk about a lot of ideas, but we so focus on execution. Like, let's just get going, get going, get going. Well, we would say, hold on, pause. X means pause in this case. We don't need to jump in with solutions the way that we did it before. When I talk to leaders, one of my questions is, are you still trying to solve problems of today the way that you did 10 weeks ago? Because if you are, that may not serve you. Some of those old practices may not serve you in the time that we're in right now. And how you think about it is, as individuals and as organizations, we have habits, and this is a habit wheel here. So there's a trigger or a cue that stimulates us to take action, for us to want to do something different. And we decide that there's an action that we take, and as organizations, we have a way that we try to solve problems. There's a cue, we say, okay, we need to solve it this way. And the reward is that we have a direction, we make a choice. And this is reinforced by brain science and brain chemistry. When we make a decision, it releases those good feeling chemicals in our brain that make us go, okay, the uncertainty has lessened. I feel better. I have a way forward. Let's go. When we say I'm in uncertainty and I'm just going to have to sit with it and I have to adopt new skills, oh, that's a little different. But the reward is the efficiency and effectiveness that results from that. So this is what it looks like in practice. So that top triangle is what we call the triangle of waste. And this is normally how we solve problems in organizations. There's some sort of trigger, right? Ideas are generated. There's research and recommendations. A decision is made. We go into planning and design and build mode. And then we launch and implement. And at the very end, we say, ta-da, here you go, constituents or internal staff. We made this process change. Here you are. It's in full execution. Or we do this with community members quite often. But you can see that there's a lot of time and money and human resources built into this way of creating change. Well, the skills that we're going to talk about today are the bottom sets of triangles. We start first to learn from our stakeholders. We're here to co-create with them. They help us generate the ideas. We then test those ideas with them, with internal and external stakeholders, and we make decisions based on what we learn and what's going to move people forward. And we have to acknowledge that success rarely looks like that straight line. That's sort of the outward show that we all like to put on as organizations, like, well, of course, here you are, ta-da. Like, it's not like that. We know it's a hot mess. We know anytime we try to answer problems and create programs, it's a winding journey. So we want you to embrace that winding journey, because that's what learning looks like in practice. And we want to call out that why in the work that we do would anyone expect us to get it right on the first try? In a laboratory, you have 100% control, right? You have reagents and all these controlled environments that you're going to create an outcome, and they don't even hit it right the first time, right? So why, especially in the social sector, would we get it right the first time? We're working with really complex systems, practices, historical, institutional procedures and ways. Like, it's really complex. So we have to work in a new way to really eliminate the waste that we create trying to make change more quickly. So in the chat, I have a great story that I will share with you, but have you ever created something like a program or a service, an option for someone that you thought would be awesome and it did not work? Say something in the chat. If you haven't, we need to talk afterwards because I think you're a miracle human. But I would love to hear if any of you have done that and kind of what that was like, what that experience felt like. Clay did a lot of iteration, it looks like. Yes, yes, yes. Definitely. Yep. We've all had that feeling of, this should be awesome. This should totally work. And then, whoopsie. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing your vulnerability and talking about that. So my story was, I was working at an institution and we were working on preventing and addressing skin cancer. And we want to focus on protecting young children from exposure from the sun. So we really wanted to work with families. And we thought, what better way to get in early, but to partner with hospitals in the maternity ward. So when these families have a new human, we can say, here's something that you should really think about is sun safety. And we gave them a little baby sun hat, and we spent all this time creating this back translated brochure, English and Spanish, all about sun safety. We had a culturally confident photo shoot. It was all put together, and we were not getting response from the program. And the nurses were saying that we've been handing out hundreds, but we weren't getting any of our little evaluation response cards, really not getting any feedback. And it dawns on me doing this work now that what a ridiculous idea to try to talk to someone that had just had a child about sun safety. They hadn't seen the light of day for days, right? They're exhausted. They don't know how to take care of this little person. They don't know how to partner with their partner any longer. They don't know how to breastfeed, like all the things. And we're talking about sun safety. So we do this accidentally all the time. And I can tell you, we created so much waste. We got like national grant funding. We won awards for this program, and it did not work. So we have to be really careful about this stuff we think is awesome, and then oopsie. So again, we can come up with new habits. So when you have a trigger that says, oh, we're entering uncertainty, we want you to use these new skills as the new actions you take. You'll experience rewards better than you ever imagined. And we want to remind you of this quote. When we use the same behaviors to solve the same problems, it is that definition of insanity. We're only going to get similar results than the process that we've been using to get to those answers. We want you to really work to shake it up. And these are the 5 pause skills. We're going to go through each of these and give you some examples, and we'll have some more chat window interaction as well. But we're going to go through each of the pause skills. It is an acronym, as you can tell. And when we jump in, we want to state that when we're taking on new skills, there's an amount of vulnerability that really is at the heart of this work, that vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation and creativity and change. We have to be open to where the journey takes us. And this is the variety of reactions that people have when you talk about change and you talk about innovation, you talk about new problem solving skills. Some people are like, woo, let me have it. Other people are terrified, and some are like, okay, I will trust you, but I have no idea how this is going to work out. And we recognize that this is a common feeling, and it really matters how people feel. And it's important to recognize that you're trying to take on change efforts within your current culture. And a lot of organizations are seeing a highlight on some of the gaps and issues in their culture as it existed pre-COVID are really coming up. Leadership weaknesses, poor communication, lack of connection between colleagues, some of the siloing, hierarchical decision-making, that stuff is all bubbling up and it's shining brighter than ever. So as you're thinking about change efforts, really know that you're coming from that cultural perspective that you were in before. There is such a thing as organizational trauma, and we carry it with us as individuals that have worked within organizations, and it has true implications. So consider that. And many of us that have worked in change efforts, we get tired. There's compassion fatigue. You see the same thing. And when you get that secondary wave of feelings, it gets that lessening of compassion. And then the last piece, attention deficit trait. At the Network for Social Work Management conference, there was an amazing speaker that talked about this, that we're seeing this in workplaces we're seeing that inner frenzy, that lack of patience with colleagues, the lack of critical and strategic thinking. This existed before COVID. This is one of our old slides. It exists now on steroids, right? So it's really important to think about how you're showing up as a leader, how you're showing up to your colleagues, and how you're showing up, in the context of all the work you're trying to do with all of this stuff going on. And this is something we used to tell leaders all the time as well, that this is really what staff were always telling us that they wanted from their leaders. They want to know that leaders support them. They want to be seen as valued stakeholders themselves. They want to know what's going on now more than ever. They want to know the North Star, and they want to see leaders walk the talk. They don't want to see leaders say, okay, everyone change, and then the leader remains completely stagnant. Like, that's so crushing for people within an organization. So really important to consider these. Oh, there we go. So the first we're going to talk about is package the challenge. So these are the questions that we like to ask within the organization are, what if you were aligned? What if everyone was joined and understood that key priority that you're focused on as an organization? What if you had clarity? And what if people were informed? This is so important to have a strong foundation before you start to address a challenge. It seems common sense, but we walked into a lot of teams that we're not aligned. So the very first question is, what is the challenge? So as I go through each of these skills, it'd be great if you could think about that challenge that you thought about, that you wrote in the chat, and use it as a thought exercise as we go through. So you first want to name that challenge. And what's important is within a challenge, they're not all the same. You should not treat all challenges equally. There's a difference between execution and search around challenges. So activities that are really focused on the known, where we have a challenge, but we just need to increase efforts or increase response. We know how to do this. It works really well. We just need to hire 3 more staff members and here we go, or do additional training. That's more of an execution type task. And you can measure the performance of those tasks. Say, did the 3 people get hired? Did they show up? How is it functioning? Great. If you're saying, how might we create a whole new way to teach this practice virtually? Woo, like that could be highly searched. That there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty. And with that, we want to measure learning. That's our outcome of success. And this is really important if you're responsible for other people to get this right as a leader. Because if you give someone a search task, but you treat it like execution, it's wide open. You don't know how to do it. And then you say, well, I'm going to measure where you got and how you got there. It's like, whoa, they don't even have the skills to do that, right? You have to hold them accountable for what they can be held accountable to. Execution, you can measure the performance. Search, you're really measuring learning. What do they know today that they didn't know yesterday? So once you have the challenge, we want to look at our stakeholders. Who is involved and impacted by the challenge? Make a big list of everyone involved. We sometimes will have like 10 different stakeholders. So you might have volunteers, donors, decision makers, funders, government, private partnerships that you might have, private-public, and think about what do you think they would say about the challenge. We want to get stakeholder focus. We really want to think about how they would talk about the challenge in their own words. So that's where we get started. That's really the grounding. Your team needs to be aligned around that. And this is where team comes in. We often work in silos and we're divided across hierarchies within organizations. So we want to think, what if we created value for each other? What if we saw our colleagues in other areas to say, how might I solve problems for you? Or how might I be making your life miserable? Let's really figure out how we can work together and think about how you can learn together. And what if you shared power? What if, like in the nonprofit sector, power just wasn't left to the executive leadership team and to your board members? What if frontline staff that are working most intimately with community could chime in and say, hey, I have the great ideas. We have encountered so many staff that say, no one has ever asked me, but now that you have, I have a Word document with 100 ideas sitting on it. And they're the most amazing people that are activated. So we want to encourage people to really think of teams as a way to work. So think about who needs to be a part of the challenge, who has expertise, who has experience, who offers unique perspectives, those people that are like seen as the troublemakers, right? They might challenge status quo. And who are the people that might be a little bit slower to adoption? They might have some concerns and need to be brought in early. You want to bring in all those different perspectives, bring them to the table. So that's the first, package the challenge. get everyone aligned, and form a diverse team of thought leaders to really work on it. Okay, A of pause is assess uncertainty. So we often just bowl forward, right? Our brain chemicals get released. We get so excited to build and make that decision. The giant triangle is reinforced by all the ways that most of us solve problems. But what if we turn that upside down and we said, what if we identified what we didn't know? What if we just called out what's uncertain? What if we assume we're wrong? We have a list of ideas, but none of them we know are true. We say, what if all of these are wrong? Let's go find out. Let's go try it. And what if we celebrated when we didn't build something because we saved all that time and money and energy? This is really, really important to identify uncertainty. It changes the game of how your organization works because it takes failure off the table. No one's afraid, and you're all in the equal playing field of saying, I don't know, I don't know. And the whole goal is just to learn as quickly as possible. Why this matters is if you don't focus on what you don't know and you don't co-create with your stakeholders, you will create the space. One of your stakeholders will make this space. And for some organizations, especially if you work in local government, we've worked with labor groups, it can take years to bring people back into the fold after they feel alienated. If you alienate constituents and community members, it's really difficult to retake that ground. I heard a story once from a friend who's actually on this call. She'll recognize it. I won't name her. There was a leader in an organization. He has been a leader in many different areas in the community for many years, and was talking to a client, someone that had experienced services with an organization. And this person was saying, why do you think people aren't taking advantage of our services? What's going on? Why can't we get more recruitment? And the person said, well, if you drive into the apartment complex in your white Taurus, that's like city or county issued vehicle that has a giant logo on it, and you pull into my apartment complex, I don't want to be associated with you or that vehicle in any way, because my neighbors will assume that you are here because I have harmed my child or done something wrong. And I don't want that. And I don't want my neighbors to think that I might have called against them. And this person who's done this work for decades was blown away and said, I've never thought of that. That's really significant. So some of these oversights seem so tiny, but have huge ripple effects because we never talk to people. We never ask them. We never identify uncertainty to that degree. So I really hope that story illustrates how we need to understand, because what we don't know is huge. That's the yellow spot of that circle, right? We walk around just not knowing. And it's just the way that life is. And that's, life is fun. We get to learn a lot of stuff. We need to get to learning. And this picture really just is another example. You have a cat bowl, 3 different bowls, potentially 3 different cats. You imagine each one will arrive at their docking station. And this is what they do because, cats are crazy. This illustrates time and again how we have seen projects go, where people have a very definitive expectation, a very definitive plan, and this is the result. Something very different pops up. And I'll share an example of that. So we have bias that we walk around with of how we think life will go, but also we have our own lens and our own biases that we carry with us when we work to solve problems. We don't want to be biased. We don't mean to, but we have to point it out to each other. And that's also the power of team and identifying uncertainty, saying, we don't know, let's go learn. And then we can say, what are the assumptions you might be making? And you can move forward from that perspective. So when we address uncertainty, we answer these questions. We try to say, what do we know about the challenge from our organization's perspective? How do we know it's a challenge? What are the symptoms? What's the background? What has even been tried before? What's working and what's not? It's important to go through these questions because it honors the work of your colleagues and the work that has been done in the past. You need to get that grounding. But then you want to ask these questions to see what else is out there, what else is going on in your organization, and how you need to learn more. And then for your stakeholder, how does the stakeholder talk about this challenge in their own words? What do they want? What are the outcomes? What's in their way? How are they currently solving a problem? This is a hugely important question. We have to understand what people are trying, because not only does it show the exquisite creativity and resilience of people, but it gives you the clue of the resources and capacity that they currently have, and you can learn and with and from them. So it's really important. And for any of you that are trying to write down everything on these slides as fast as you can, I will send all the slides to you, and I will send a recording as well. I know there's a lot of content on some of these. It's extra delicious. Yeah, you're very welcome. Okay, so we've assessed uncertainty, right? We've gotten grounded in the challenge. We understand who our stakeholder, our list of stakeholders that we've prioritized, who we're going to start with first. We know the challenge. We've identified everything we don't know that we need to go learn. Now we're ready to go learn. So the next is to understand stakeholders. We want to use our empathy superpower. So these are the questions we ask when we're thinking about empathy. What if we could experience their perspective, right? What if we could get to why? What if we knew what people really did, their actual actions, not just what they said? There's a big disconnect between say versus do. And Bonnie, I will call you out now. Bonnie Bazada had shared something on LinkedIn that Phil Duvall had shared, that right now, a lot of us are feeling what people in poverty have always experienced. Frustration of broken systems, lack of communication that continually shifts, the lack of brain power of saying, oh my gosh, like I am exhausted, I'm doing my best, but I am juggling so much right now, I just can't give 100%. We're experiencing what people have been experiencing and shouting from the treetops to share, right? And so it's really important right now more than ever to be as empathetic as possible with your colleagues, your friends, your community members, everyone as much as possible. So to the chat, we would love to know examples or strategies that you have used to gain stakeholder empathy. What have you ever done in the past to, or what you're doing now even, to really get rooted in what people are feeling and hearing and seeing? If you could share some of those, we would love to share with everyone else. Listen without judgment, that's really good. Oh yeah, safe space. Interviewing, yeah, listening. Talk about listening for sure. Oh yeah, a day in the life of, yeah, being curious. Yep, trying to level power. The safe space is huge, right? People need to be in that learning zone. Doing check-ins. Yeah. All the 5 whys. Yeah, get deeper. Oh yeah, Lori shared doing empathy interviews with people that were no longer in their program. Yeah, I remember they worked on a great project and learned a lot. Communication structures, open-ended question. Oh, you guys are pros. This is awesome. Well, I'll definitely be reinforcing some of your amazing superpowers you already have. So empathy itself, doing the interviews and going to talk to people, is often an intervention. Just that, just going and talking to someone. We've heard from so many people that say, wow, no one's ever talked to me before. No one seemed to care. Thank you. Wow, I feel connected already. So that alone is an amazing first step. There are no shortcuts. We really need to talk to people one at a time. We love surveys, we love focus groups because we think they're efficient, but they don't give us that heart connection. They might give us a direction or point us in a place to go. But even after we have that data, even after we've done our surveys and we understand what people are going through, we have to go deeper. We have to do those one-on-ones to really understand. And listening, like you said, means no interruptions, no problem solving, because that's when we start to pile on some of our bias and filters. And then we want to do open-ended questions, like you had said, to get the stories into why. And we don't want to predict people, ask people to predict their future behavior. We want to ask, again, what have you done before? What have you already tried? Because it teaches us what's already been done. And we can understand what worked and what didn't. What would you rather have experienced? Those sorts of questions. And what do we do after? This is a great quote from our friend Mark Caber. He works in San Francisco local government. Your goal is to walk away and you can feel someone's frustration in your own body, that you carry it with you. It becomes part of your muscle memory. Amelia and I have increased the size of our heart and our capacity because we are full of stories of the hundreds of people that we've talked to. It is a really powerful experience. So you feel with them, you notice emotion. You focus on what you've learned, what took you by surprise, themes or talking points that came up again and again from the interviews that you do, and what new questions came up for you. You want to write those down. It's really also intriguing to write down how many people you've talked to and how long it took you to speak with them. Because more than not, teams are shocked that in an hour, they could talk to 40 people, that they could do that much work in that short amount of time by dividing and conquering and how they work within their organization. So important to distill the learning after you're done. So that was the understanding stakeholder section, right? We've packaged our challenge, we've assessed all of that uncertainty, we've gone to do that deep empathy work of understanding our stakeholders. And then what do we do with it, right? When we learn all that juicy feedback and we tap the amazing brilliance of those we're trying to serve, we then get to focus on solutions. You notice that we had many, many steps that were different than that big giant triangle. That started with solution, right? We are getting to solution and then testing. So with solution and brainstorming, we want to be inclusive. Right now in organizations, we seem to pretend that only executive leaders have brainstorming ability. Like we only let them play in the sandbox, when we know that we should have multiple people in the sandbox and be getting so much feedback. And we want to focus on abundance. We joke that often organizations will say, okay, I have $5, I have 5 minutes and 5 people. What should we do, team? And that brainstorming is terrible, right? There's nothing great that really comes out of that because we're really brainstorming from status quo constraints. We really want to focus on abundance and coming up with 40 different ideas that all have potential. And think about going bold. We had an organization that wanted to come up with a new model to serve low-income families with early childhood education access. And they came up with some crazy ideas that the teams were like, oh my gosh, this is never going to happen. But one of the ideas with some of the testing has now become a workplace childcare program. They just got a $500,000 grant to focus on that program. And they are now talking to angel investors that are talking about how might they partner to bring childcare to workplaces and many different organizations so that family members can be close to their children while they work. And it can be a workplace model that then expands. And that came out of a crazy idea because they went bold. So you want to go bold to see where you will end up. And when we have a bold idea, we then have to think about testing and experimentation. We don't just go bold and build. We want to test, what if we knew what would work before we built it, right? We want to test those assumptions. We want to reduce our risk, and we want to be quick and scrappy. We want to get to those tests very quickly. So we want to challenge and change our opinions with data and insights. We want to see what actions stakeholders are actually willing to take, not just what they say they will do, but what will they actually do. We want to get to the why or why not behind their behavior. We have the evidence to inform those decisions. We'll talk about training up a little bit. And then we're preventing waste with the best of intentions. We don't want to do that. So the key to testing are assumptions, right? You see this contraption that this person's built. It's like, do you think it'll work? Oh, I hope so. We don't want to build things that we think should, could, would work. We want to build things that we know will work. And so we have to test those assumptions that are built into the solutions. So it's all about what we take for granted. Of course they will. I know that. I'm sure that they'll do that. That's where things start to fall apart a little bit. So we want to, with a team, actually write down and document all of our assumptions. So stakeholder will is how we start all of those statements, and then you fill the blank with the action you want to observe. So I'll give you an example. We work with an organization that was looking at these best practice guidelines for how to support brain health of older adults. And one of the areas of science and research have indicated that music and musical experiences support brain health of older adults. So this organization held space for seniors to come and have weekly luncheons and, play cards and interact with their friends, and had transportation to and from. And they said, all right, we're going to bring in some musicians to come in while they're there having their lunch and spending time with their friends. This will be fantastic. So they changed the drop-off time. So they had the time that the little bus went and picked up all the people, dropped them off at the center. And then they said, oh, while you're here, we're going to keep you a little bit later because we're going to have this great musical experience. It almost generated a riot. these seniors were so angry and so upset. They had a very detailed schedule. They did not want to be delayed. They felt as though they were being held hostage. They did not want the music to be played because it was too loud. They were there to talk to their friends. They didn't want any change. And the leaders of the organization were horrified. They felt horrible that this had happened, that they had created this cascade of emotions when all they wanted to do was help and nurture their brain. And so if they would have tested, do people want to stay longer? Do people enjoy music? What else might they do at that time? There are assumptions that we can test. So here's how we design an experiment. If we make some offer, if we say, please sign up to leave a half an hour later because there will be music, that could have been an experiment that they tested. They could have tested many other actions that they wanted the individuals to take. So that's really what it's about when we design experiments. If we initiate, here's a new food drop-off point. Instead of coming to the food bank, now you come here. Okay, that's an idea, but what are the assumptions built into it? Do people have access and transportation to that site? Are there areas where people can form a line in their vehicles so they're not exiting the vehicles and still keep social distancing? There's just a lot of considerations to make, and they're usually all connected to behavior. So that's the testing piece that must be really moved forward on. And the last is the E. So we've done our solution testing with inclusive brainstorming. We've tested our solutions, and now we have to make decisions based on evidence. And what if learning was the metric of success instead of failure or success, right? Failure is kind of off the table at this point. We're just learning. We have an abundance of solutions. We can go back to the other 39 options. We want to know why something worked and why it didn't. That's really important. We don't do a good job of this within organizations to really understand why it was successful and why it wasn't, and to share that learning. And then we want to train up with evidence. Someone said it really eloquently of, it's a nice way to tell your boss that their idea is horrible, is with evidence and with empathy. You can't just say that to the boss. It doesn't work very well. Instead, to say, I know you thought that was going to work really well, and I did too, but I interviewed 30 people, and nobody wanted that. It's really fascinating. And we ran these experiments and we tested these 8 assumptions, and we could not validate the assumption. It just did not come together. And so, and then as a leader, you go, wow, why do you think that was? Oh, here are my 8 conclusions of why I think that is. And here's some recommendations of what we do next. Super helpful, very efficient, effective way for an organization to work. And we've seen this many times where we worked with a city and they wanted to focus on crime. And every person we interviewed to talk about crime, all they wanted to talk about was affordable housing. That was their biggest pain. That was their biggest issue. So we completely pivoted, and the team then started work on affordable housing. From the beginning, they had to go back to the boss and say, everything we planned to work on completely shifted, and they had all the data to back it up, and were very successful in exploring what those solutions could look like. So when we do our testing, when we do our experiments, our goals are to gather observations, how are people responding? We're developing insights to understand that, why. We're making decisions, which we'll talk about on the next slide. We keep testing until we feel like we're ready to leap. We're building up that confidence and that data to back it up, and then we're sharing that learning. And these are the 3 decisions. We're going to tweak an experiment and run it again. Maybe something was a little bit off in how we tested it with people. If something's wrong, right? We need to pivot. Something about our challenge is a little bit off that we don't understand, or we have a wrong stakeholder, or the solution might be off, or we can persevere. The next assumption needs to be tested. We validated that that is right, that will create value, that will work. Now we need to test the new one. Another example we did with an organization was they wanted to go from paper to a paperless system, with people that were coming to their city hall to fill out paperwork for new building improvements. And what we did is we took the form and we entered it into a Google Doc. We just typed the first 10 questions of the form. And when people walked into the office, we offered them the option. We said, would you like to fill out a paper form, or would you like to fill it out on a tablet? No one touched the tablet. And the organization had budgeted about $150,000 for a software solution that they thought they were going to implement. No one wanted the tablet. They said, I'm not tech savvy. I'm really used to the triplicate. I like filling it out, and I like kind of shuttling the paper around because it makes me think of all the questions I forgot to ask in each of these different departments, and I get to interact with the staff here. It's really helpful. and you're one of the fastest lines that there are in my entire county. Like, this is my favorite place to go, and I do have to focus on the building improvement plan. So it really taught them a lot of stuff that they never identified, and they were able to optimize the experience otherwise. So these are the 5 skills. We talked about getting aligned, knowing what we don't know, writing it all down, getting to know our stakeholders and getting that deep empathy for what their lived experience is like. We've then brainstormed and tested. We tried to actually break the solution, not build it. We want to optimize it. And then we made decisions based on what we knew was actually going to create value. So we want to hear what questions you have, what you're thinking about, what this has brought up for you. So please ask any questions that you have, anything you want advice on or what you're working on. This is the awkward pause I was referring to. As you all think about what questions you might have. Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, Hannah, have you shifted or emphasized any one of these skills more during pandemic? Yes. I think the 2 most important pieces are the empathy piece and the experimentation piece. We really need to bring out that empathy muscle right now. We really need to understand, because our people that we serve, their needs have shifted. We can't just say, oh, it's the same needs times 10. We'll just optimize what we did before. We're just going to keep the same skills and the same services that we had 12 weeks ago, and we're going to act like nothing's changed. Like, that's ridiculous. Empathy is huge, to go back to those individuals and say, I may or may not have even talked to you before, and if I have, I want to know what now looks like and what you think is coming down the road. What's going on now and what's coming in the next 4 weeks that you're most worried about. That would be a great way to shift your empathy. And then the other piece would be around testing. There is such urgency that I think a lot of organizations really want to release those juicy brain chemicals to feel like they're making a path forward, that they're removing some of that uncertainty, and they want to start building as quickly as possible. Amelia and I both would say, hold up, like, really get people engaged across your organization, get those teams activated, get people working together as they have capacity to do so, and really do some of that testing, identify those assumptions and do those testing pieces early so that we don't create more waste with the reduced resources that we have. And I would also say, in the beauty of the emerging focus on collaboration that we're seeing, share your learning with others. Do not hoard information. Do not hoard learning and insights at this point. Share it with other organizations that are also trying to serve the same individuals and around the same needs, because you're only going to help everyone elevate the way that you're improving those services. So great question. Okay, so Bonnie, how to create tolerance for this process with organization, with collaborators? It's not every organization is ready for this, but what's kind of making Amelia and I shake our head at this point is, and I just wrote a post about this a couple weeks or last week on LinkedIn, is that the normal reason why people would not engage in innovation or change efforts is they said, oh, we don't have time, we don't have money, our board will never go with it, our leaders may not be ready. Oh, they were waiting for the perfect alignment of everything to come together. Like, their strategic plan would be complete. Everything would be ready, right? It doesn't happen like that. You have to jump in to identify uncertainty. So as much as you can frame, what are our biggest challenges right now, and how can we be more efficient and effective with employing our employees' superpowers and engaging employees in a different way? How can we move faster? A lot of organizations we work with will say, we've been working on this for 2 years. We've been talking in circles about this for 4 months. We've had these ideas on the back burner that no one's had the courage or capacity to address, and now they're all at the front. Everyone is starting to pull those innovative ideas and back burner issues to the front and really starting to test. Hooray. So we're hoping that also some of this urgency will activate some of the decision makers to change the way that they work. And when we send out an email, I'll send also an attachment to an article that we wrote last year about the 20 questions you should ask your collaborative partner before you get started. If you are thinking about merger, acquisition, or enhanced collaboration, there's ways that you can use empathy and experimentation for that. and how to rethink how you engage and what questions to ask. So we'll send that as an attachment as well to help you with that collaboration question. Okay, Lori, how well do empathy interviews work at a distance? Oh, I love that question. Yes, if you can stay, I've heard people say instead of social distancing, more physical distancing, if you can stay distant, have the masks and all of that as you're working with constituents, face-to-face is always ideal. It's a little harder when people are wearing masks because you can't read the true emotion on their face, and the body language is a little bit inhibited, unfortunately, but we do want to keep our constituents safe, right? But if you can't be with them in person and have that distance, then video chat is the next. How we always start is like in person, video chat, so you can try to interpret that body language, phone calls, and email back and forth would be like a last resort, but not preferred, because we really want to have a conversation, a back and forth to understand why. So it's important to still do this work. You just have to be a little bit creative in this distant time to do that. How to do business the way we used to, how to get rid of Zoom. Oh, interesting. I wonder if you mean about like relationship building and connection. You might want to say a little bit more, Rex, and I can answer that a little bit more. Yeah, Zoom is a challenge. I know we're super tired of it, but it's what we have right now. So we're working with the resources that are available to us. Yes, Clay, asking the right questions. If you use those prompts of what you don't know, really spending time thinking about areas of uncertainty, you can prioritize those questions. And that's how you draft those empathy questions for your interviews. You look at all of your areas of uncertainty. I wish I knew how they thought about X. I wish I knew the best way to reach them. Like, where do they go for information? What's the biggest area of need? What if they, one of my favorite questions is, if I gave you a magic wand, what are the 3 wishes for X, Y, and Z? Or what are the 3 things you would do? Other really good questions are, what's the best part about X? What's the worst part about X? They can tell you some of their experiences with services or whatever they're trying to access. But yeah, getting the question is important to try to get that right. And it's an iterative process. The script that you write for your first set of questions will probably be different because you're going to keep learning and iterating by reading people's body language and getting responses. You'll know if you're getting it or not. And writing questions that are ask about feeling. What was the last time you tried to solve the problem? How did you do it? What was that experience like? How did that make you feel? What do you wish you had? Those are important. Okay, so Rebecca, how to understand why people remain tech fearful or upskill your user base for cloud adoption? Yes, that's one of those things that we also shake our head about, is that organizations also have been waiting for the perfect moment to get more tech savvy and tech enabled, which is tricky. And I think tech and social good is an interesting one. We've been joining some webinars about virtualizing local government. And you hear some speakers say, oh, we have an SMX emergency line that we send out all these text messages to the community. Oh, we have an integrated website that puts all the frequently asked questions and all of the COVID updates on it. We have all these ways. And some of the city managers have said, 2 of the best ways that we've really used recently are bullhorns and flyers in grocery stores. So tech is a yes, and I think there's a lot that we need to understand about tech. And, some of the biggest questions, and Rashmi and I just talked about this last week, was like, what do you do with communities without access? How might this bring up the conversation around universal access to internet? How might this bring up the conversation about access to technology? We're seeing this with schools and how school districts are trying to get parents and children connected with putting school buses as hotspots, children working in parking lots to try to get their schoolwork done. Like, we've got to ask some of these questions about not only how do organizations adopt technology, but how do their constituents adopt technology, and avoiding that software as a solution is the answer. We work with a lot of organizations that think because they adopt a platform or something that everything will fall into place, not understanding that there are entire empathetic processes built into adoption that people need to take into account of how folks interact and how they need to connect with those solutions. So yeah, the cloud adoption, we think everyone would start to understand the power, but I think there's some nuanced understanding that could be gone into there. How to plan in stages. Okay, yeah. So planning in stages would, Rex, what you were talking about is sort of the questions you all had. How do we come back? How do we return from this? And I think you can use these skills for that. I think you can follow the exact process. You can say, okay, if your stakeholders are your coworkers, right? Or you're a leader and you're saying, how do I bring my employees back? They may not want to come back. Some of them may love the flexibility of working at home. Some of them may hate it. They're tired of being around so many people. It's too chaotic. They can't wait to get back to the peace and calm of the office. You're going to have to do empathy work. I would list with your team, form a team of diverse folks to say, you know, what are the areas of uncertainty? What are the questions we want to ask everyone? And giving them safe space to be honest, not building up expectations of you all have to come back. So if the person says, I don't want to come back, they're scared to be that one, right? Have them really have an honest feedback about what they would hope would happen in the workplace, and how you might integrate folks back. And you could run some experiments. You could plan some assumptions you want to test as you start to reintegrate back to the office. But I would also encourage organizations to reconsider this archaic thought that all showing up to one building from 8 to 5 p.m. and all working together is the way that you measure success and productivity. I mean, Amelia and I have worked remotely from each other for years. We work remotely from all of our clients. We've always worked at home, and it's pretty awesome for us, right? So everyone's going to have a different need, but this idea of all in it, all together in this one space is really kind of a tricky, outdated frame of thinking. So I think there's going to be opportunities for organizations to bring up some superpowers of their staff that they didn't know were there by providing them some more flexibility with work hours, work structure, and where they can actually work. Thank you for your comment, Colleen. Oh, thanks for the comments. Yay. We have just 1 minute left. So any other questions? Let me break down the racial certain lenses.
Just want to call out the comment from Dana. I think it's a great way to close of that. Yeah. There's been a talk initially about how do we go back to what we had before? And I think what we're all starting to recognize, which is also an opportunity, is that maybe we don't want to go back. This is a huge opportunity to change things that we have kind of known need to change, but we haven't wanted to address them. And figuring out ways that we can really be even more effective in the work we're doing. So we would challenge you in ending this call of, instead of thinking about how do we go back, thinking about how is this an opportunity to be even more effective than we ever have been before.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we will send information about this, but we are starting a new project called, I think it's like the Possibilities Project. We are talking to thought leaders, some of you on this call right now that we've interviewed, to ask you, what do you want to disappear with the virus? What have you seen emerge that you want more of? And how can we start to elevate these larger conversations? So we're going to be hosting online conversations to talk about some of these big questions in the sector. So we will be sharing that with all of you. So hopefully you can join this community and see what's possible. And we thank you for joining us for this time. We will have future webinars that we will send out. We'll send out the deck and everything you need with the recording. So thank you so much. We appreciate you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye. Bye.